Welcome to the Hamumu Halloween Home Horror Hoedown, the podcast where we watch scary movies so you don't have to.
From award-winning to completely unknown, we take them all way too seriously.
I'm your host, Mike Hummel.
And I'm your host, Solange Hummel.
Now, warning, we use a ghoulish number of spoilers, so watch the movies first.
Second warning, we don't know anything about anything, so don't take us seriously as we take these movies seriously.
Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!
It's a Christmas wonder.
That we found a wonderful Christmas movie to discuss.
We found a Christmas movie. Yes.
We did. A scary Christmas movie. All the Creatures Were Stirring from 2018.
Which is one of Mike's favorite kinds of movies.
Was
an
it
anthology?
an anthology?
It was. It was a series of Christmas stories.
All wrapped in a visit to not a movie theater, but a play.
Yes, like one of those theaters, like little community theaters that you find tucked way back in like a really sketchy part of town down an alley that you definitely shouldn't be walking down. And that's the only way to get into it. And then you get in there and there's like 12 seats and this stage is the size of your dining room table.
Yeah.
And
It was avant-garde.
It was very avant-garde. So I think that part of it was called "And to All a Good Night," even though we didn't learn that until the end.
When it made sense to say that.
Yeah.
Because each of these stories had a nice little title, which was like a...
Okay, so yes, they are all lines from the poem The Night Before Christmas.
Okay.
Which I should know about because I am basically an expert.
And the title of the movie, All the Creatures Were Stirring, is a play on a line from that poem.
Right. Here's the problem that I have.
What's the problem?
I know that poem very well. And one of the stories is called In a Twinkling. And I don't think that that is a line from the play. Nope. I don't think that is a line from the poem. It says things like I'm thinking toward the end where, you know, he's got a twinkle in his eye or whatever, and he lays his finger aside of his nose and giving a nod up the chimney he rose. Like there's definitely the word twinkle is in there, but I don't think the phrase in a twinkling is actually part of the poem.
One moment. And then, in a twinkling...
No!
I heard on the roof.
The prancing and pawing of each tiny hoof. No! All of this to just be proven wrong in the first place. As he drove out of sight, Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. Did I skip something?
Happy Christmas.
Yeah.
British.
Yeah. Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night. Wow. I am both impressed at how much I do remember of that and very sad at how much I don't remember.
Yes.
Because I literally recited this poem at Christmas time every single year when I was a child.
I'm sad with trying to figure out what I can do with that. Because we're 20 minutes into our podcast now.
I feel like you could have a little 20-minute bonus episode that comes out on Christmas Eve.
It's just the poem.
It's the night before Christmas.
Sully's going to read this poem to you. Don't worry about how long it takes. Don't get frustrated.
Yeah, that was the thing that I did that I contributed to like Christmas Eve was that I would try to recite this poem. And even as a small child, there were those lines that I'm like, these lines are not saying anything about Christmas. They're just like weirdly overly poetic. Like the ones about the leaves in front of the wind and the ones about the new fallen snow moon. Like those lines, I was reciting those lines just the words. I did not know what they meant. I was just saying the words in order. And we all know how I do when I have a series of words and I'm not sure what order they go in.
Oh boy.
So those lines were always a varying success. But the rest of it, like the story about Santa coming and all of that, I had that down cold at one point.
Well, all of that to say that all the stories in this movie do come from lines from this poem.
Yes. So we have discovered. So we
Congrats
have discovered.
us. We established that the wraparound story is them at the theater. They're watching an avant-garde play.
So the first scene in this avant-garde play takes place in an office, and it's like Christmas Eve. They're doing their like Secret Santa White Elephant game.
Yeah.
Only some unknown entity has decided to up the ante and has added gifts that are
Deadly.
murderous.
Yeah, what's funny is it opens with a trap gift that kills the guy who opens it. Then from that point on, there's none of that. It's just like, here's a knife, here's a gun. I get kind of what he was doing there, but no more traps at all. Just
No more
dangerous things.
No more of that kind of trap. Which that trap gift, he picked that up. I was like, oh, that's one of those Jack in the Box things.
Yeah.
Why did you pick that toy up? That is exactly the size and shape of a Jack in the Box.
It was.
Like, just avoid that. No, there were no more of those kinds of traps, but there were several like psychological traps.
They were psychological.
There are now weapons in the room, and then there's, these things that are designed to like pit one person against the other in some way.
Skipping ahead to the surprise reveal, we discover that it's the janitor that's done all this, and that I like that. It makes sense. Like, he was someone who had access to recording all this footage of them and taking these pictures. And at the beginning of this little sketch, we saw him being treated poorly by one of the guys. So it's like, he's not well cared for.
I think I missed that part because I didn't know the janitor existed until the very end. And I was like, what just happened?
It was just very brief. He was walking by with his thing, and the guy gave him his mug and was like, make sure you get it clean this time. Like, why is he washing your mug for you?
Yeah, that's gross. Okay, the other thing is I didn't understand. Like, it jumped from we're like 4 gifts into the white elephant to suddenly the lady in the red sweater is wearing the gas mask and like bursts out a door and is escaping. And I'm like,
yes, it was very
how did
sudden.
that happen? There were like 12 gifts left to go.
Okay, what happened is they were all occupied with whatever was going on, one of them being killed, or maybe it was the guys going at each other with the knife and the gun, threatening each other. And they turn around and see her, and she's like, I found this. She had opened her gift, and it was a gas mask. So she had put that on so that she could go through the gas safely. And then it cut straight to a shot of the janitor, so that's when we saw the janitor. He's outside standing in the gas in a gas mask, and he walks away, and she gets out of the building and escapes. And it all happened so fast. It was like, what is even going on?
So, like, is it supposed to be that she got the gas mask, the rest of them died from the gas, which was in the room?
I guess so.
And then she just opened, because the janitor or the, bad guy at the beginning did say, if you live, I'll let you go. So she put on her mask, everyone else died, and then she just like opened all the rest of the gifts really carefully and then got to leave.
Well, I don't know if she did that. I feel like she just left immediately.
You're not playing the game.
He only gave him 10 minutes. Maybe the 10 minutes was up and he unlocked the door. That's why he was standing by the door.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
That's the thing with this story, is that it was not clearly told at all.
No.
Also, it looked and sounded like a sexual harassment training video for a corporation. It was so low quality.
With weird 80s split screen things. Like, it's like
Yeah.
this sort of split screen that comes from like an 80s buddy cop show.
Yeah, they would, and they would split screen when there was no reason. Like, a guy's looking at a present on the table. They're both in the same shot, but then it split screens the present and him. Like, we already had both of those things.
Yeah, that was bizarre. So then we suddenly, we've gone from seeing these two characters watching this bad play, and then suddenly we're in this scene, and then suddenly we're back on the stage, and their 3 characters in the play are like acting out
Yeah.
something. They're all standing there with like one of them has a gas mask on and stuff like that.
So you can tell that they're acting out what we just saw, but in a very vague way because it's avant-garde.
In an even less understandable way than what we just saw, which, And that happens for each scene. And also in between, this German nanny lady comes out and changes the placard to the next title.
Yes, so that we know what we're in for.
So the stockings were hung is finished, and then we have Dash Away All.
Dash Away All, the story of a guy who locks the keys in his car on Christmas Eve, and he's all alone in the parking lot, so he's like, oh man, I'm really stuck. But luckily, there's these two girls in a van nearby, and he asks them to use their phone, and they totally let him. Everything's kind of good in this whole thing. He just gets away with it. He uses their phone to call, and someone's going to come and deal with him.
Yeah, he calls the roadside assistance is what he called it. Yeah, he calls roadside assistance. And he also calls his wife and lets her know, like, hey, whatever, this happened. I'll be home late, or don't send Dad.
Everything's great, except the girls come over and hang out with him to help him pass the time until they show up.
Only because while he's talking to the AAA guys, he tells them his birth date, which happens to be 12/25.
Indeed.
1981 or something like that.
Yes, and they were very excited to hear that because of the ancient pact that they are bound by. We discover their van door is slightly ajar, and he's like, let me fix that for you. Let me shut it, because they're like, oh, it gets stuck sometimes. And he discovers that there's a little monster in their van, and they're like, what? There's no monster in there. I don't know what you're talking about. While they pull out a knife, cut themselves, and perform the ancient ritual of tether switching that we're all familiar with, which tethers him to the demon that's in their van instead of them. And we learn that the demon can only be tethered to people who are born on the 25th.
Yes, December 25th.
Yes.
Which I suddenly then have so many more questions about why these two women are both there.
Yes, how does that work?
Were they friends to begin with and they just coincidentally both have the same birthday?
And not just that, they both have been the victim of this ritual. I thought it had to be transferred.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it only makes sense if it's one at a time.
Yeah.
Like, if one of them had it and they gave it to the other one, then they gave it to him. But then why are they both still there?
And they're not just hanging out. We see that they are both trapped by this curse.
So how did these two women get simultaneously trapped by this demon that is tethered to a single being?
That is the story we should have seen, because that would have been quite the coincidence.
Yeah.
However, what we did see was not a story at all. We saw the beginning of a story because they switched the tether to him, and then the story's over. That's it.
I mean, as far as I can tell, the only reason there are two women in that van is so that one of them can be sacrificed to teaching us what happens when you try to leave and you're still tethered.
While the other one can do exposition.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's the answer. It does not make any sense.
No.
And there is no story because they just left as soon as the story started.
Yeah. And so now he is now the keeper, and we have no idea. Like, we know his wife is at their house with their kids and his parents, and now, like... The surviving girl sees his car full of presents and is like, what's your address? I'm going to drive these to your house and drop them off. So, you at least don't lose that. She is going to steal his car, though. That's what she's doing. Sure.
She's leaving him with the van because they said he has to stay near the demon, but it's clearly the van he has to stay near, which is...
Okay. That was another series of questions I had, because they were like, you have to stay within 20 feet of the demon. And I'm like, is the demon trying to stay near me?
Yeah,
is the demon trying to run? Do I have to, like... pay it. What if I start to what? Is the demon gonna follow me? Like, how does this work? They did not explain any of that.
Wait, we know it's the van and not the demon for some reason, because the girl who did move too far away from the van, she stepped past the line and the demon pops up behind her and kills her.
And then we can see the purple
he's right
circle
next to her.
around the van.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that. But She says she's going to go drop these presents off at his house. He's got a van. I assume the next thing he's going to do is get in the van and go to his house.
Except she made it very clear that, like, if you go to your house, the demon's going to be at your house.
That's true. That's
so
true.
instead, she's telling him, you just have to go on the run until you find another person who has this birthday and you can do the ritual. She says it took them 3 years. And then in the meantime, I'm going to go drop these presents off on the porch and steal your car. And I'm like, you're just extra traumatizing that family. So now that they think, well, Dad came home long enough to drop off all the stuff he bought, and then he took off. Then he just bounced on Christmas Eve.
I mean, he could call them and say, hey, demon problems. You know how it is.
Can he?
Yeah. Why
How
not?
is he ever going to... How does he buy food?
I don't
How
know.
does he get another phone?
They got burner phones, which I don't know where they got the money for them when they couldn't ever leave their van.
And why did they have a burner phone? Completely unnecessary.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because they were sketchy kind of people.
I mean, again, I think the burner phone was just, we didn't know what was going on yet, and it made them seem like they were up to no good.
Yeah.
Which they were.
Yeah, it started off seeming like they were serial killers and they were going to pull him into their van at some point, and that would have been more interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one had a lot of Swiss cheese holes in it.
So much.
So then we move on to All Through the House, which is basically just a high-speed...
Very...
Scrooge story.
Yeah.
What is the Christmas Carol?
Yeah, A Christmas Carol.
With Scrooge being the cranky neighbor in the neighborhood who doesn't like Christmas.
He defaced a guy's light up Santa, which he's terrible. He deserves what he gets.
Okay, but also that neighbor had so many Christmas lights on that the entire outdoors lit up red and then green and then red and then green. And I'm like, you know what? I probably would have gone crazy.
Yeah. I don't know that anyone has lights that actually do that, but yeah.
Yeah.
He did. And the 3 ghosts appeared and they messed with him, and nothing really made sense because things were happening, but then they didn't happen and stuff. I don't know. And he talked to the TV a lot.
Sure, because there were 2 like Dickensian era women who were like also talking to him.
Yeah, the TV was talking back.
Okay, one thing I did like about this one. I did kind of like this version of Scrooge where like it was modernized. It was almost like the Bill Murray kind of Scrooged.
Yeah.
And it was sort of very 80s vibe because he's like doing coke off the glass table in his living room. And like, he's that kind of guy. And I liked that he was just really gross and evil. But I mostly liked the ghost of Christmas Future, who was like, you hit your head on the coffee table and you're unconscious and bleeding to death on the floor. And he's like, it's fine. Someone will come and find me. And they're like, no. And he just like rots away on his living room floor.
That's how they got away with having such a fast Scrooge story is in this moment, you're going to hit your head and die. And your future is just that you're dead on the floor.
Yeah. Christmas present is right now when you're being a jerk to your neighbor. And Christmas future is also right now when your neighbor pushes you down and you hit your head and you die.
Yeah. And then later his neighbor comes in again because, I don't know, some things happened, some things unhappened.
Yeah. Well, you know, Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
He learns his lesson and he's
so
like,
fast.
you know, yay, now I'm doing snow angels with the defaced snowman or defaced Santa.
He was doing grass angels.
Yes.
Because there was no snow at all.
True.
He seemed just completely insane, which is fair after what he'd been through.
Yes. But really, like, I had no notes about that one because I was just like, I mean, okay, it's another telling of the Christmas Carol.
The plus to that is that it had an actual arc and it went somewhere.
Because Charles Dickens wrote it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true.
Although, can you call, like, it's not so much an arc, it's a 90-degree angle. It just...
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of a Christmas tree shape, if you will.
It is a Christmas tree shape.
Okay, then after that, we have A Rose Such a Clatter, in which some guy is, like, looking at pictures of a lady like boudoir pictures of a lady.
I guess so. They never explained anything about that.
I thought it was going to be that he was like private eyeing this woman and, you know, whatever, had taken pictures. No. Anyway, he's looking at these pictures instead of looking out the window of the car he's driving, and he hits something.
What does he hit?
Well, it turns out that it's a reindeer wearing a collar that says Blitzen on it.
What?
And because the reindeer is so badly injured, he smashes its head in with a rock.
Yeah.
And then goes home where this woman is there.
The picture woman.
Uh-huh. And then something, a reindeer, I think, but I can't tell if it's Blitzen come back to life or if it's one of the other reindeer avenging Blitzen.
They made it seem like it was Blitzen coming back to life. I don't remember why, but they kind of did.
So is it like a pet cemetery thing?
But I don't think that's what it was, because as he was driving away from having killed Blitzen, there was a red glow chasing him
Monster
in the car.
vision.
And it was clearly Rudolph chasing him. Right? And yet, then when he was getting murdered, there was not like a, bright red glow to make you think, oh, haha.
No, there was red glow that came out of like the bathroom and stuff.
Doesn't count.
You had the red monster vision.
There was red monster vision, but he doesn't look through his nose.
Okay, here's the thing. I totally thought that was just like symbolic of the rage of whatever it was that was coming after him.
That's what it looked like to me.
But instead, okay, imagine being Rudolph and your nose glows all the time. That's what the world looks like. Everything is red.
That would drive you insane and you would kill people.
Okay. Rudolph came and avenged Blitzen's death. Now, why Rudolph and Blitzen were standing in the dark on some back road by themselves, I don't know.
I mean, they've
on
got
Christmas
their
Eve.
own lives. They were doing things.
Like the one night of the year that they have to work.
They're picking up a pack of smokes before work at the Wawa.
The Wawa. I feel like the lesson from that one is if you accidentally run over one of Santa's reindeer, look around and make sure you got all of them.
That's a lot of reindeer to get.
Okay, so then...
Wait.
What? Oh, we're not done with this one?
No, we're not done because they don't know how it ends. It ends 2 seconds after it begins when he goes upstairs and the reindeer comes out of the bathroom and impales him and he's dead. Uh-huh. And then his girlfriend or whoever she is comes upstairs looking for him and she too gets impaled. Mm-hmm. And that's it. Mm-hmm. That is the story.
Mm-hmm. Fun detail.
Huh.
He has a set of like antlers mounted in his stairwell, which I totally thought he was going to end up impaled on.
Yeah.
But he did not.
He certainly did not, because there was even that little bit of, fun was beyond the writers of this. Like they had nothing. Like this is the ultimate minimum. Mm-hmm. It made me think of like, making video games. When the Atari first came out and you could play Pong, they're like, see, because it goes back and forth. And if you don't get it, they score a point on you. And like, that's it. That's the whole thing. Mm-hmm. That's what this was. Mm-hmm. This was Atari Combat, where you could drive your tank around and shoot it.
Yeah, there was nothing to it. The most fun of the whole thing was when we suddenly jump back into the theater and it's the three people on the stage. And one of them is being the guy laying on the ground with a red blanket on his stomach. Uh-huh. And one of them is holding some antlers.
Like a whole tiny stuffed deer.
Oh, yeah. And like jabbing it at the third one who's standing there. And every time he jabs the stuffed deer at her, she like pulls like red tinsel away from her stomach and like flings it into the air. Yeah. That was fun.
That was undeniably better than the actual scene itself. The play version was better than the movie version.
Yeah. I almost think the play version of that whole thing would have been better. Like I can kind of, the other ones are too complicated. I'm not sure how they tell them with
this
three people on the stage. But this one, I can see how it could have been told entirely in this avant-garde style.
Yeah, it'd be pretty funny if they had the little reindeer they were stabbing with.
So that brings us to in a twinkling, which is an actual line from the actual poem.
He discovered.
And this one, I'm not going to lie, tricked me.
It tricked
me.
It tricked
for like
me too.
2 seconds. For like 2 seconds, I thought it was a werewolf story.
Yeah.
Because there's like a full moon and he's getting out chains and he's like, I can't go out and I can't spend any time with anyone. I have to stay home. And I'm like, oh, dude's got to lock himself up because he's going to turn into a werewolf on Christmas Eve.
Right. But just like the tricks in the earlier episodes, that trick doesn't make any sense. What was chaining him up going to do?
Stop him from leaving the house to go. Okay. As a werewolf story, it makes sense.
It does. I know.
Okay. You're jumping to the thing that the listeners don't know yet, which is it's not a werewolf story. It's an alien story in which these aliens every year for 10 years have come and forced him to like
hang out with them,
teach them about Christmas.
Yeah.
And they're doing it in like the way second graders celebrate Thanksgiving in that they don't really understand what the whole story was really about, but they have all these like symbols that they know are part of it. And they're like, there's a tree and there's a turkey and there's candy. So the candy's all over the turkey. And so they're like anthropologists. They're basically alien anthropologists coming and like observing this tradition.
Yeah, totally. Except they're not observing. They're directly involved.
Yeah, they're very much directing the whole thing. And they're like, and now you do this. And now you say your blessing. And now you...
That was a good joke. This one was the best one by 1,000 times.
So, okay, but back to what you were saying. Once you know that it's aliens who are controlling the whole thing, what was he going to do with the chains?
It was keeping him, like he thought maybe they couldn't abduct him. I don't know if they were abducting because we don't know what happens. They just sort of suddenly shift into this black and white world where they're interacting with the aliens. So we don't know if they've even moved.
And the aliens look like 3 of the 4 friends that showed up.
Yeah.
And one of the friends was like out having a cigarette or something when the aliens arrived. So she's still herself.
Yeah.
Which is new. Like he usually does this by himself. And now he's like, oh, you'll learn what oh, sure. Try to go out the door. You'll see what happens. And then these other 3 friends are now creepy aliens. And one of them's name was Mary, which leads to the good joke.
Yes, it was a good joke. Yeah, this segment, I mean, it was fun. These aliens would just keep asking them things, or I don't even know how to describe it. They just were totally off. And like one of them, the guy, he would keep smiling in a way that was actually special effects. Like he would not be smiling and then they would like skip forward a few frames to when he was smiling. And there was even a sound effect for it where it's like, ding, and his mouth is smiling.
There's no transition. And they just really wanted to understand. And they were satisfied when Gabby finally like lost her patience and was like, what do you want to know? And like kind of spilled her guts about her childhood Christmas trauma of never celebrating Christmas. And, oh, I always wanted this doll and now I have it. And this is really messing me up and, whatever. And so that's what they wanted. They wanted like the juice.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
It's sort of like that alien movie that we watched. We did a review of an alien movie recently where she put her hand down her own throat and
no one will save you.
Yeah. They were just there for like, we're their reality TV show. Mm-hmm. They wanted the emotion, the messy, sticky, gooey, gross emotions.
I mean, they wanted to understand, and that's the inside guts.
And so once she did that, then they were like, oh, okay. And then they left, and now the 2 people who are left, they get to have Christmas together.
Yeah.
And we don't know what happened to the other 3 friends.
That's the big mystery of this one, is that the other 3 friends are just gone. And that's the only horrific thing about this whole story, because the aliens coming down and like sending you into this simulation where they're doing a little silly Christmas with you and asking you about what Christmas is like, that's not even a hardship. That's just like, okay, well, I'll help you understand Christmas a little. And it lasts like 20 minutes and then they leave. Like, great. That's some wonderful interspecies communication. I'm glad we had that.
But this guy, after 10 years, he's got like a huge, the kind of like chain link chain that you would use to like pull a tractor.
Yeah.
It was massive. and a gun. And this is how he's preparing for these aliens who show up as like 3 dots of light coming down out of the sky.
Yeah, for some reason. And we don't actually know what the chains were meant to do, because I think they were only meant to make us think he was a werewolf, which is annoying.
It is annoying. I find that very annoying. In any movie, if there's a red herring that then doesn't make sense with the way the story actually plays out.
Unacceptable.
That's a cheat that I do not approve of.
I do not either. But we have to go back to somewhere in the middle there. I don't know which stories it was between. We had an intermission during this play.
We did have an intermission.
Nothing interesting about it, really, except that we discovered that the ticket girl was twins.
And that the boyfriend, so the whole movie is that this woman and this man meet up for a date to go to this play.
Yeah.
And that the guy, he like goes to use the restroom and she overhears him talking about something like that.
Yeah.
Something sounds kind of suspicious. And then we have the second half. And then the final stage performance.
I like this one.
Yes. The final stage performance is like a fast forward of all of the things that have happened between the two of them, like word for word, some of the exchanges that they had.
Mysterious. How do they know?
Right. And then it like catches up and is synced with them for just a brief second and then goes ahead. So she's seeing that this guy who, when it's synced up, is leaving to go use the bathroom again, I guess. I don't know.
Well,
he has
his
to leave
stomach
for
was
some reason.
very upset.
Yeah. So then on the stage, the guy gets up and leaves. And then we see the stage version of him talking into the phone again about how he thought he could do it, but he can't. And he's just so hungry.
He needs to feed.
Yeah. And then the stage version of him comes back and says, "Oh, is it over? I'm starving. How about you?" And then it fades to black. And then the not stage version of him comes and says, "Oh, is it over? I'm starving. How about you?" And like looks a little creepy.
Yeah. So this is another case where they didn't wrap anything up because literally he turns into a howling demon face momentarily, which is something that happens in the Alien one too. And it's funny there that the whole Alien one is great. He turned into the howling demon face at her when she wasn't looking. And she was creeped out by all this, but only a little. Like, she's like, "Oh, this isn't not great." And then the camera pulls back from them and you see that the creepy guy who's been around for this entire time, also at the play, laughs really loudly. And that's the end.
And then that's the end.
And it's like, what happened? Did he feed? Does he have to feed? Why
was
did he make
even
a
trying
face?
to feed? Is she hallucinating this?
Maybe he's an emotional vampire and he was feeding.
Wait,
which is exactly why he took her to this play. He's like, "Oh yeah, those negative emotions."
This definitely is a play Colin Robinson would go to see.
Yes, for sure.
So, or is the guy who was laughing at the end an alien who was there
Learning about plays.
but also like feeding off of the emotion of them having to watch this like really bizarre thing? And
Maybe.
I don't know. I didn't understand most of it.
It did not make sense.
No.
Is why.
No. I do agree with you though that the In a Twinkling, the alien one, was by far the best skit.
By so far. Like, that was interesting enough to watch. That could have been made into a movie, although it didn't really have enough content to make a movie, but it definitely was entertaining and cool. Also, they magically suddenly all had ugly Christmas sweaters on that were in full bright color when everything else was black and white, and that was fun too.
Like wildly oversaturated. All the gifts that the aliens gave, that was the only thing that was in color.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
I guess I don't have a lot more to say about this anthology. I think it's pretty rapidly summed up with it didn't make a lot of sense. There were moments that were interesting, but all in all, I sort of felt like I was trapped in a community theater watching some kind of weird avant-garde play that I had no hope of understanding.
That makes so much sense.
Which perhaps is exactly what they were going for. So it may be that this bad review that I'm giving is exactly what they were going for.
Maybe.
But I don't... I overall found it largely disappointing. The stories were too disjointed, to not only between each other, but within themselves to hold together in any kind of way. Like I could not suspend enough reality to be able to just be like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to give this one 2 snorts of nose tinsel. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's being generous. And I'm giving it about an extra half snort just because I do have a little bit of a soft spot in my heart for really bad anthologies. Especially when it comes to holidays.
It's not just me.
It's the holiday themed, like we're just shoehorning everything in there kind of thing. Like there's something about that that's so bad, but also so kind of like horrifically satisfying. Mm-hmm. So 2 seems fair, even though I don't really think it's that good.
Yes. Here's the thing. You took my 2. Mm-hmm. I also give this 2 snorts of nose tinsel because I agree it's like a 1 across the board. Mm-hmm. Especially for me, it's not just that they're disjointed and whatever. It's the endings of almost every single one, or the complete lack of endings. Like, I think the worst offender really is one of the kind of better stories, the Dash Away All, I think it was, where he's being tethered to the van, because that is literally the opening scene to a story. Like, it doesn't even start to go anywhere. It just sets up a situation. And you're like, okay, so then what happens? Mm-hmm.
And I frequently find myself in the role of defending short stories where people are like, but that's not, I need to know more. And I'm like, no, you don't. That's all you needed. That's the whole thing. Yeah. In this case, nope.
That's not the whole thing. That's literally a premise.
Yeah.
But I think most of the stories were just really bad in that respect, but that last story was so good. Mm-hmm. And that bumps it all the way up to 2 snorts.
That's fair. Mm-hmm. That's fair. All right. Well, that wraps up our Christmas review for this season.
Yes, we didn't know there was going to be a Christmas review, but there is. And it's today on Christmas.
Yay!
Hurrah!
Does that mean that next week we will be back with a New Year's Eve review?
Next week will be the 1st.
Yes.
That means that's the 2026 year.
2025.
That means that is...
Oh, that was terrifying. You just jumped us through over a whole...
Are you mad about that?
Okay, no. No.
Yeah.
I'm not.
You're happy about that.
Yeah, that would have been nice, actually.
It'll be 2029 on the 1st.
So here's where we reveal that we're putting ourselves into cryogenic sleep for the next 4 years.
Yes, for sure. But it'll be 2025 on the 1st. And at that moment, we will be beginning the 2025 season of our show. It won't even be this season anymore.
Oh, my goodness.
But hopefully we'll do a New Year's movie. When we do it.
We'll see you there in the future, in 2020.
Distant future.
5.
Yeah, that's crazy. 2025.
I know.
25 years after 2000.
Right, we're a quarter of the way into a century that...
hasn't started yet.
We didn't even know if we were going to get into.
Yeah.
That's insane. Okay. I need to go take a nap. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Hey.
Yes.
Hey. Stop. Hey, Santa.
Hey, Santa.
Teach me to mash potato.
Teach me to locomotion. It was Debbie and the Darnells, it said in the credits.
Of course it was Debbie and the Darnells. That's my favorite.